Well, hello and welcome to PM Express. GFA Dissolution ongoing. The High Court has placed a 10-day injunction on all activities. Indeed, this is definitely going to be a test case for the GFA, for Ghana, and for everything, because some legal luminaries are saying that, look, the GFA is a private entity. There is freedom of association in Ghana, and the GFA per se has done nothing wrong. It's a group of football teams who've come together to form an association. If one individual misbehaves, or some referees who by themselves are not necessarily members of the GFA misbehave, how does it affect this entity for a government to dissolve it? Maybe government can say, look, you're not looking after Black Stars anymore, and stifle it. However, to go in there and say, that's it, I'm not allowing you to form this association anymore, we need some legal brains to really help us. And then we need people from GFA to also tell us how it is the setup is and how government can get involved. But in any way, the High Court has granted a 10-day injunction. I want to say it's definitely one that we have to keep an eye on and look. Interesting days and interesting times ahead. My name is Nana Ansakwao IV, the Chief of the Electoral Republic of Akwamadumasa. When I come back, we are looking at the GFA and matters arising. Don't go.
It is the view of government that the GFA, as constituted presently, is not performing the objects for which it was incorporated. And from the Anas video, clearly, it's being used as a vehicle for illegality. And the government cannot sit back, and therefore the Attorney General, as the protector of the public interest. Because remember, government puts in a lot of support, be it financial or logistic. So we cannot spend even 1 second. And significantly, if you go back to the JFA Commission report, it's a clear indication that these things have been going on for far too long. And in fact, when you look at the video, the perpetrators themselves testify to the fact that it is normal. That is the modus. So it was felt that we have to urgently arrest the situation pending the determination of the petition. As justice, as a person who should be promoting justice, I will not refuse to hear them. But that should not change the process we have started. I have not received, you are telling me for the first time, I do not know about this intended meeting, but anybody, as a public servant, anybody who seeks to me, as much as it's practicable, I will see. As to the outcomes, I cannot be there. I can only say categorically that we will go on with this petition.
Well, thank you very much for staying. That's the premise of the conversation today. With me in studio, sat right next to me, is Fred Papo, Director, Accra Great Olympics and former GFA Vice President. Fred, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Great. And then we have in studio Selassie Adeka, who's into international business and also a sports lawyer. Selassie, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me start with Fred, just to give us how the GFA is set up. Is it a government body? How does government come into the GFA setup?
Yeah, the GFA has an interesting setup, if I may say so. If you're looking at the organogram, well, of course, basically it's an association of clubs, and then what we call constituent bodies that are relevant to the business of football, such as schools and colleges, security institutions, referees, and the rest. And then the clubs. The clubs are made up of the different levels, starting from the lower level. We have the juvenile clubs, and then the what we call Division 3. These are clubs that are represented mostly at the regional level, at the RFAs. So they are organized on regional basis. So we have Division 2, Division 3, and then the juvenile. They are organized, and then women's football. These are mostly at the regional level. So every region in Ghana has got what we call a regional football association. Then if you come up to the to the national level, we have the Division 1 clubs, about 48 of them, and then 16 premier clubs. Now these bodies are represented in different ways at the different levels. So at the top, we have the GFA Congress, which is made up of representation from these various organs, have said, 2 per premier club, 2 representatives per premier club, 1 for Division 1, and then the RFAs are represented by 3 persons per region. And then we have the constituent bodies, Coaches Association, Professional Footballers Association, and all the rest coming into to give us the Congress. And the Congress functions as the highest or most important, as it were, legislative body of the FA. Then if you come down, we have what we call the Executive Committee, made up of 22 officials, all of them elected, including the president of the FA. Now, the Executive Committee, as the name stands, is the executive body of the FA, which is responsible for implementation of policies and the rest. But then we also recognize the fact that since the representation at this level has a national spread, and issues relating to football are of a daily nature, you always have issues coming up which need to be addressed over and beyond what you might have anticipated. Then there's a provision that we form an emergency committee which sits in or administers football in the absence of the executive committee, and then they go back and report for the executive committee to ratify their decisions. You know, so we have that kind of structure. So basically, that's the way the FA is organized, and it's a company limited by guarantee. So definitely, we have a very good level of representation, and then we have a lot of tasks that the FA performs. In doing this, there are other actors who are quite key. For example, you mentioned, I think in your intro, you mentioned the referees and the rest. We have referees, we have coaches, we have medical staff, we have sports psychologists, different kinds of professionals who are all represented in the functioning of the FA. That's the way the FA operates. And the spirit, I'm not a lawyer, I don't want to make it quite clear. The spirit of the laws and regulations governing the FA emanate from FIFA. You remember, if you may recall, previously we had this situation where the FA was the topmost body, was what we call the management board, the last of which was headed by Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo. And then with Dr. Kofi Amwa, Kwesi Nyantakyi was in the vice, myself, and then Professor Aloysius Nkabe. After a point, FIFA directed that all member associations had to operate by a certain body or framework of rules and regulations. So we had to change our rules and regulations to suit that. As a matter of fact, FIFA kept supervising us as we were going through the redrafting process, until we had this new system where we had to go for elections. Of course, FIFA made very clear provisions on the requirements that people had to meet before serving on the various executive bodies also. So we went for elections, and then we started what I'll call the presidential system, with an elected president, elected vice president. The vice president and the members of the emergency committee they used to be elected by the executive committee, until recently when there were some changes in the regulations which mandated or gave the authority to set up the emergency committee, including the appointment of the vice to the president of the FA. So I think these are some of the main issues by way of characterization. I'm sure if there are some areas also you want to, you can ask to go along.
So let me bring Selassie in here. I mean, listening to Fred, how then do government come in and say, well, some people in this organization have, fallen foul, and therefore everybody in the organization, can go, close it down?
Thank you. Under our constitution, under this current democratic dispensation, the executive, which is headed by the president, has police powers, which can be summarized as just saying, just because you're a private company does not mean that you can be sanctioned to commit criminal acts and go scot-free. And that is what we are seeing and play out with this whole Attorney General going to court to seek a dissolution. So, but to do so, it must be grounded in law. And so the law that has been activated or is being relied on in this case is Act 180, which was enacted in 1963, which is titled the Bodies Corporate Liquidation Act. what you are going to see in the next few days or weeks or however long it takes, the whole process is known as a winding up of a private company. And in this particular case, there are actually 4 grounds on which a company could be dissolved. And I think in the interest of time, we'll focus on the grounds on which the Attorney General can rely. But before I get to that, companies can be dissolved under this act by a petition or a petition to the High Court or the registrar, and those are the primary ways. So in this case, what we are seeing is a petition to the court. And so the question is, what gives the Attorney General the right to go to court to seek a dissolution of a private company? If you look at the law gives, and you saw in the video you played with the Attorney General, in the Attorney General's statement, she stated 2 grounds that I can identify, which is that the company is not complying with the objects for which it was formed, and also that the company was being used to perpetrate certain illegalities. Now, those are allegations that would need to be proved in court, but that is the ground upon which the Attorney General, those are 2 of the 3 grounds upon which an Attorney General can go to court on a petition to ask that a private company be dissolved.
Let me stay with you. It looks like individuals in this private company did what they did, rather than the company itself, forging like a fraudulent letterhead, opening a secret account, and the association doing something backdoor. But rather, individuals of the association did what they did. How does it affect the association?
Well, I don't have the facts upon which the Attorney General is going to court. But if you listen to what she said, she articulated that in the Anas video, she cited perhaps in Anas videos, mention was made of the fact that this is something that is widespread. The depictions in the video are something that is widespread and commonplace in the association. I believe and I'm confident that perhaps whatever is going on at whatever activities the CID, I understand I heard this morning they have a warrant to search the place. So oftentimes this warrant will be to search for criminal instrumentalities of crime. And so perhaps I don't know what they have and what the Attorney General is privy to. So I believe it will fall, everything will play out in court.
Fred, let me come to you. I mean, you are a great Olympics. You're a member of this association. I mean, what have you done wrong?
As Olympics or as Olympics as a member?
Yeah, as a member of Olympics,
okay.
and member. So by that, you're a member of the association as Olympic. You're not a member of GFA as Fred Papo, but as Great Olympics.
Yeah, with Great, because I'm representing
Great Olympics. So you're a member of this.
Yeah. So it's the clubs who are members, not the individuals.
Not the individuals.
Are just officials who have been appointed by the members to stand in their state.
Exactly.
So well, generally, I think what's happened in recent times, and let me just make a point, as it were, to clarify the minds of people. It's not as though the clubs or the members of the association are happy or unconcerned about what has happened. The members are totally disappointed, and if I may use the word, that would be too strong a word, but totally disappointed and reject what has happened. Yesterday, the clubs met. When this issue started panning out, we have a national spread in terms of membership, like I did indicate. The clubs met, I think there were over 80 to 100 of the representatives over there to deliberate over these issues. And they resolved that there was a need for an emergency congress, which I alluded to earlier on, because that's the body where decisions bounded or founded in law can be made. They resolved that there was a need for an emergency congress to go and discuss the issue and then possibly look at the aftermath, to find a way to get football back on this proper track. Now, the thinking then also involved going for a meeting to actually look at the possibility of reforms, review and revision of certain regulations which have been proven over time and actually crystallized by the recent happenings to have outlived their usefulness or not serving the purposes or interests of football, and then not actually giving the game an image and dignity that it deserves.
Can you give me like 2 of the things that you think, look, we need to look at this thing again?
For now, I can give you my personal.
Sure.
One One has to do with the whole issue of the appointment of the Vice President and the Emergency Committee members. I think these are very important positions which are key to creating some form of checks and balances within our system. Previously, the Executive Committee membership of 22 had the sole mandate to vote and then elect the Vice President, and then 3 other members to join the President and the Vice President on the Emergency Committee. But quite recently, I think about 3-4 years ago, that law was revised, maybe for good reason. And then the President had the power to appoint these guys. Looking at the first tenure of experimentation of this, I've seen it's a very big failure. Because if I appointed you, Nana, with all due respect, I think you find it a bit difficult to tell me to the face that, Fred, I think you are going haywire, you are just going off tangent. And I think, human as we are, that is the situation I believe some of our colleagues find themselves. And then inherent in that, even though it's not stated clearly, is also the power of the President, as it were, to fire any of these guys. So I think by virtue of that particular one alone, it kind of weakens a certain check that we need in the system when we are not there. That's one. If I may look at another one too, I think it has to do with the exercise of franchise by the regional football associations. For example, if you pick the Greater Accra Regional Football Association, there are no less than 84 Division 2 clubs there, together with Division 3. The lower you go, the more the clubs multiply, and then the coast football and all those rest. But then when it comes to elections or when it comes to Congress, the whole region is represented by 3 individuals. For the purposes of discussion and the rest, I think they could articulate the views of the region very well if they've done their preparatory work before coming to the National Congress. But when it comes to voting at the FA is by secret ballot. What guarantee is there that if the 3 of us are representing the Greater Accra region or the Eastern region, the way you vote or the way Selassie will vote or the way I will vote will be a reflection of the generality of the will of the people of our region? Totally no. And then by virtue of that arrangement, it gives too much power and attraction to the RFAs, the regional, because any interested and shrewd politician contesting only knows you have to court the favors or the pleasure of the 3 representatives, that is 30. And then already before one could say, Jack, you have 25% of the votes. That to me, I think, is a weakness. And these are some of the areas we really have to revise, and then they are quite a number, but I'm sure if we sat down to think and reflect deeply, we'll be able to go into some of those areas.
So are the members for the injunction and the close down and dissolution, are the members for it?
I think there is a bit of a fast tracking of events which are for example, yesterday as at the time we left the meeting, I don't think there was an issue of injunction, so the members did not really know. What the members came in clamoring for was that, one, we reject what has happened. We want to take steps as an association to correct this so that there wouldn't be a repetition of those kind of acts too. And then 3, in doing so, we also recognize the role of the government in football. Government as a key partner, a very important partner. 4, the clubs and the FA for that matter are ready and willing and prepared to team up with government to address these issues. That was as at last night, and then a delegation was sent to go and meet the minister. I think it was there that the minister informed them that government was already in court. So as of this morning, when this injunction business and things came up, I don't think the clubs as a body have had the time to digest it. So it will be very difficult for me to say what the clubs feel. But I've just given you their position as of last night.
Selassie, assuming the Attorney General won the case and dissolved the GFA, it's still, you have to come and see Fred and bring his Olympics, and so it's still the same members that you have to bring back on the table. The only people you get out are the people who caused the mischief. So should the shorter version be pick the people who caused the mischief and punish them rather than rule out the whole thing?
Well, like I said, the Attorney General has her reasons for going to court, and based on some news reports that I had, there's a football aspect to what happened today, according to what I have monitored, and that is that the Attorney General, as the GFA as a national association became a member of FIFA, and when you're a member of FIFA, you have certain rights that you acquire through your membership. One of them is the right to vote at the annual Congress, which is, I believe, slated for tomorrow, the eve of the World Cup. And so there were some reports that in spite of what was going on, certain members of the executive committee had planned, and according to FIFA statutes, the FA appoints delegates to attend to cast the vote. And so there were some news reports that in spite of what was going on, that there were certain members of the FA who had actually planned to travel and to cast the vote at the Congress. And the vote that is up at this Congress is a very important and pivotal vote. It pertains to the award of the 2026 World Cup, and I believe it's between an African
Morocco.
Exactly. Country Morocco versus the United States. And if you understand the way this FIFA politics works, our vote is very important in the grand scheme of things. So according to what I heard, the Attorney General wanted to prevent that, which is the reason why an injunction was actually sought. To go back to the Liquidation Act, it actually allows for interim provisional measures while the actual process is ongoing. And one of those, I believe, is the court's exercise of its powers to issue an injunction, which effectively bars the FA and its members from doing football activities, or even actually including going to cast the vote. So that's basically...
Fred, now that's the politics, so you help us here. I mean, there was this rumor when it first started that the next World Cup was either Morocco or a Western country, and so, the mafioso were, trying to stir up things so that Morocco wouldn't win, and then it goes to, is it America that?
Yes,
yeah,
the USA.
America, Canada, Mexico, yeah.
Yeah, so if the AG puts this injunction now and Ghana's rep aren't going to go and vote, how does it affect the whole thing?
Well, I think Selassie did well by trying to explain the dynamics. When it comes to elections of this nature, every single vote counts, and people really count on people. But as things stand now, I wonder what the situation with Ghana is, because what I know for sure is that before said congresses, FIFA writes to the member associations to nominate persons who will be participating in the Congress. It's usually the president or his vice, the general secretary, and then one additional member of the executive committee. So apparently, I think the names of the participants had gone already. That might have been done months or so back, for their tickets and other logistic arrangements to be put in place. But then this issue came up just at a certain point in time, and it so happened that 2 of the 3-member delegation, I think, were not able to go. They stayed back. I don't know whether it was for reason of the umpires. That was.
Is it because they appeared in the video?
No. They did. None of them appeared in the video.
Okay.
At least not the video I've seen.
Okay.
I'm sure there's quite a lot of, but I haven't seen any of them appear in the video. But it had to do with this case, so they were advised to. 2 of them stayed back. But apparently, I don't know. But I don't know when the other person traveled. Reports I got indicated that he managed to go. But then today I started hearing snipers of reports that he was returning. And the vote should be tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 13th.
The vote is 13th. If it's true that he's returning, that means he's not going to cast any vote. So Ghana will not be counted amongst those counting the votes, and we all know the implications of those things.
So, is it safe to say, obviously Ghana would have preferred Morocco and voted for Morocco?
I'm not a member of the executive committee, but typically issues like this would have been discussed at the executive committee level for Ghana to have decided on who it was going to place its votes for. I don't know much about what the committee had decided before this umpires erupted.
I see. So definitely Ghana is out of this one.
Yeah, if Mr. Ose Tutu Agyeman is returning, then it means Ghana will not be able to cast his vote.
If after all is said and done, it's the same guys that you guys are going to come together. The football teams are going to come together. Are you coming together as GFA, or are you coming together as a different name?
That is another issue, and that's another issue for which some of us would want to clamor for calmness and patience and tact in trying to address the issue. Because my understanding of football and association football is that it's the clubs that will make it up. So no matter the dissolution or suspension or ban or whatever it is, if we are still committed to, as it were, doing football going forward after the resolution of whatever it is, we can only do football with the clubs as a nucleus of the association. So I don't think there's any intention to disband the Kotokols, the Olympics, the House of Folk, the Bichem United, the Amidaos and the rest in Division 1, the Bravo in Division 2, and the rest. These guys will still be there. So definitely at a certain point in time, there will be the need for a convergence of ideas and minds to see how best to go forward. And personally, I think the longer we delay, the worse it will be for all of us. So we definitely, like you rightly said it, because unless we decide as a nation that we have nothing to do with football, be it club level or national level football, you cannot say you are going to concentrate only on national level football, because where are you going to get the players to feed into the national teams? You know, so whatever the case, I believe we will need each other. And I don't think it's the time for us to separate our ways and then try to take antagonistic postures. But what I know for sure is that the FA is not confrontational in any way. The clubs are not confrontational in any way this issue comes up. As a matter of fact, they have indicated their readiness and willingness to team up and partner with government to find a way out of this situation. And I believe that the earlier we took that opportunity, the better it will be for all of us.
Fred, let me get a bit controversial. Do you think there's a lot of personality issue as the GFA president in Huapasem, and therefore that's why people are reacting, you know, putting everything, like throwing the bath water and the baby, all thing out? Could that be the problem, or there's more that we don't see?
I think it could be part of the problem, and it looks like there's a certain level of personalization, rightly or wrongly. I'm not the one to pass judgment on that, you know, but I believe Selassie also made that point earlier where he indicated, or was it you, who indicated that some individuals had been found to have done some wrong. Not just in the video. These kind of, the Attorney General also talked about the issue of perception and blah, 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 illegality and things like that. We all know some of the clubs themselves have been crying foul. My own club, Olympics, before the league started, we had issues with the justice system within the FA. We took the FA to court. The league was delayed for quite an unduly long period of time, and it caused a lot of hardships to so many people. So many clubs have had the opportunity to go on there and then lambast the system and things like that. So definitely there are problems. Nobody is going to shy away from that. Nobody will just brush it under the table. You know, but the fact of the matter is that it's because of problems that we have individuals and institutions. You know, you were asking whether there's a there are quite some personality issues about certain personalities within the FA, and of course, if you do not handle things in a calm manner, you might be tempted to, as it were, throw the baby away with the water, and the water away with the baby, as the case may be. So definitely, it is true there's some personality issue, but I would still want to urge that we exercise quite a bit of caution in trying to address these issues.
I mean, Selassie, I mean, you can get the sentiment that, look, the clubs don't want to start afresh because it looks like a really complex setup which has been running for some time. Even though they have their challenges, at least they are going. And to say, look, everybody go home, come next week and we start afresh, I don't think they want to do that. It would be one hell of a case for AG to go and say, whether you like it or not, I'm not going to let you associate, because there's freedom of association, and the association per se, you know, we haven't heard anything. You and I don't know what's happening. It will be a tough case for her.
Well, I think, you know, when it comes to the issue of freedom of association, we are raising a constitutional issue. I think that's separate from the corporate issue that the Attorney General has gone to court on. The Attorney General the action the Attorney General has taken can be seen as the exercise of the executive's police powers to ensure that, you know, we don't have criminal activity rampant in our society. And so in the exercise of that power, they are allowed to go into private companies that are basically being used as fronts to perpetrate illegal acts. and to go into and to seek a liquidation of those private companies. That is a separate issue from whether or not the membership is being allowed to associate or not, because none of this injunction has barred them from forming another organization. If that was the case, then there will be an infringement on their right to freely associate. So I think we need to focus on the corporate issue, and I think the good sign in all of this is that the government has indicated that they are in touch with FIFA, because I think, you know, this is really a fiat to push the reset button to address some of the issues that Fred has properly pointed out. And I think the only way to be able to have a holistic, you know, take a holistic look at the issues and to try to fix them is to push the reset button. I don't think anything stops a reformation of the GFA as an association under the corporate laws of this country. You know, but I also think that all is not lost. This is a process that has been started, and at a point where there's going to have to be the appointment of a liquidator, which is under our laws is going to be the registrar. And at that point, the registrar is going to assume the duties of the directors of the private company. At that point, I believe that the FIFA rule that has been talked about ad nauseum would be triggered. At that point, the registrar would essentially be controlling the association. And at that point, I believe that that's where the issue of a FIFA ban would come in. And I still think all of that is not lost, just because FIFA also you know, can come in and say, look, it looks like the issue here is that the executive committee en masse is not able to perform its functions. So let us propose a normalization committee, which will be a way to quickly resolve this issue, as Fred rightly stated.
Let me take a quick break and come back. It gets very interesting. Don't go away. Thank you very much. We're looking at, well, there's an injunction placed on the GFA for 10 days. They can't do anything sports. And then after 10 days, the legal battles will begin. But I'm asking, Fred, what is the effect of this 10-day injunction on GFA?
Well, there are quite a number of effects, one may say, in the very short term or in terms of implications. For example, there were some programs going on which have been curtailed as a result of the ban and the injunction. We also have some international assignments. For example, the Black Princesses have qualified for the World Cup within the coming months. What it means is that if this thing stands, it's likely they might not be able to participate. And I think it's very imperative on the association or whoever is running the association at any point in time to inform FIFA early enough so that FIFA would have to find ways of, if they need to find a replacement, how are they going to go about it? That's one. Ghana rightly applied to CAF to host the women's championships in Ghana sometime in September or so, just about 3 or 4 months away. A local organizing committee has been formed to that effect. What are the implications? Are we still going to go ahead to host it? Nobody can tell. If we will not be able to do that, what does that mean? Are we going to inform CAF and FIFA that we will not be in the position to do that? So you guys find a replacement within the period of time left. There are quite a number of other petty, hot, short issues of a short-term nature. Not to talk about the long-term effect of clubs having contracted footballers or players to play. Some have taken decisions not to travel or whatever it is, to stay over and maybe play for 2 years for Kotoko or Susubribri or Great Olympics or whatever it is. They are on contract. They have to be paid. How are they going to be paid? These are all quite a number of issues that would have very serious implications. But I think, once again, like I did say, we really need to sit down and then talk about how to normalize things in a way as to minimize whatever damages or adverse implications might befall us as a nation.
No, it's
not easy. I really ask myself whether this is the way to go. Do we really need it? That's a question. But then quickly, I still think that it's not too late.
So, Fred, let me ask you: have you put maybe the clubs coming together, selected some few leaders amongst you to go to government? I don't know who government will be at this time, whether the president or the AG, to sit down and say, look, we understand, but look, this will be a better option.
I think last night after the meeting, an 8-member body of representatives of the clubs were sent to go and meet government, in this case represented by the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports. Okay. That to actually tell them the sentiments of the clubs, the meeting that are taking place, the plans that the clubs had to go to Congress, and then take other far-reaching decisions. Ultimately, one of the outcomes could be the formation of a nucleus of a normalization committee, together with an invitation to government to bring some members to add up to it. Those could have been some of the possible outcomes. But then after this injunction or ban, I have not heard of any second delegation also which has been sent to government to reflect over this new or latest development. But I think the posture of the clubs is that they are more than ever willing to find a way out of this situation.
Lawyer, if I may, you were explaining that once they push the liquidation button, the registrar becomes the head of the GFA.
Yes.
Of the company, not GFA.
Yes.
Yeah. So then maybe they can run business as usual, or there will still be implications of that.
Well, the goal of so once the registrar is appointed, and that can happen anytime from now up until the court decides to actually issue an order to wind down the company or not. So I am not privy to what happened in court today, and I'm not privy to when the court is set to sit next. But typically, once the registrar is appointed, and the law under our current laws, the registrar is the only party that can be appointed as the liquidator. So once the registrar is appointed under the liquidator, the company's code is triggered, and the liquidator now assumes the duties of a director as though the registrar was a director under the company's code, and which basically creates what is known as a fiduciary relationship between the director and the company to act in the best interest of the company. Now, it is also important to note that the goal of the whole procedure is to wind down and ultimately dissolve the company. So what the liquidator will be doing will be to look at the assets and liabilities, address creditors' concerns, make payments if there are distributions that need to be made to the members and stuff of that nature. So I wouldn't say that the duties will be to actually continue football business.
I see. And what will FIFA's response be to that?
Well, under the FIFA statutes, what FIFA prohibits is, what FIFA wants the associations to do is to be independent of third-party influence. And that has been subsequently been interpreted by the Court of Arbitration for Sport to mean undue influence, to refrain from being unduly influenced by third parties, specifically governments. And so the jurisprudence has also gone on to define what is meant by undue influence. And in most of the cases that you will read from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, they address the issue of the control of the managerial activities of a company. So I am of the view that once the liquidation button is triggered, it is safe to assume to argue that perhaps the company is now being actively controlled by a third party, a registrar, who is not an elected official of the FA or an appointed official of the FA. So at that point, I believe that FIFA perhaps could trigger the ban, because that is the punishment for being unduly influenced by a third party.
The other thing I wanted to find was with the nature of Anas's video and the number of people, the rampant taking of money, would it be an exception where FIFA says, look, normally we wouldn't have come in, but this may be too much, and therefore, AG, go ahead and do whatever it is you want to do?
Well, I'll let Fred take a shot at that first.
Well, I wonder. I think in all such matters, I believe FIFA will be very clear in dealing with such issues. For example, it's come up with a directive on the former president of the Football Association with respect to a temporary ban from footballing activities before his resignation came in. I do not think whatever the scale or complexity or seriousness of the analysis revelations, the statutes within FIFA will be unable to deal with that. I believe even at the FA level, because I remember one of the decisions the previous executive committee took, the executive committee until the ban, one of the decisions they took was to advise all who had been found to have engaged in these unacceptable acts in court to step aside from their official functions. And I'm sure Congress, if Congress had been convened, further decisions would have been taken at that level to address the issue. You know, so definitely, I think there are quite enough statutes and laws and regulations within, at the local level and then at the international level to have dealt with these situations.
Fred, but looking on the bright side, if they shut it down, we, you know, lost all our footballing opportunities for whatever it is, and then you came back together again. I mean, would it help? I mean, because we were battling with superstition, and now we're battling with, you know, underhand dealings. If we start afresh, would it, you know, reduce, I don't know, reduce it a little bit? And let me add it to, you know, why have you guys also allowed it to happen? Every referee wants a tip. You tip my defender, I tip your player, you know, I tip your keeper. If you know, it's already tipping.
I think, admittedly, I'm not going to go into the defense of this, your last question. I think quite a number of us have slept on our jobs. It's a fact that should be accepted. And we've allowed these things to have festered for far too long. Also because maybe our system and our structures and our regulations are not easily responsive enough, especially to situations where officials who have the responsibility to trigger these things choose not to, or choose to do it in a way which is not so optimal in responding to the issues at hand. Now, talking about a fresh start leading to, ideally that would be okay, but we've not had the experience of a fresh start before. If we were to start afresh, who is going to be in the Premier Division? Who is going to be in the Second Division? Who is going to be in Division 1? There are quite a whole lot of practical issues. I cannot actually comprehend all. If one decides to just imagine, will you still call Kotoko a Premier club, or they would have to start from Division 3? How many clubs are going to be there? There are quite a lot of issues. Wow. Not to talk, if you're looking at the national teams, where do you start from?
Lawyer, I mean, we are Ghana, we have our constitution, and they are FIFA. I mean, whose rules do we, which is the default pattern now?
Well, that is an interesting question. But I think I'm going to try to answer it very briefly. You know, I think FIFA's power is grounded in the World Cup, which is the biggest marketing and sporting extravaganza in the whole world. And what they have been able to do is to create a brand that is loved by every single country, you know, the inhabitants of every single country. And those inhabitants also tend to constitute the electorates when it comes to the internal politics of those countries. And so when you add those two, FIFA has a sport that everyone wants to see their country in at the World Cup finals. And that is what brings about a sense of national pride. If you have that, and FIFA has a stranglehold on that competition and decides who gets to participate and who does not get to participate. And participation in that is a right that you get from being a member. So that is how FIFA has a stranglehold on football and the emotions of the public. And so what you oftentimes find is that under the threat of a ban for non-compliance, they are able to control governments. And they've been able to do that effectively since this subject has been studied in scholarly writings as far back as 1990, when we first saw Sepp Blatter use this what is known as the FIFA's non-intervention policy, and if you don't follow it, you'll be banned. They used it effectively in 1990 when Greece had first qualified for the World Cup after so many years of not qualifying, and then there was internal turmoil in the country, and I believe the government took over the FA, just like we are seeing here, and under the threat of being banned from the World Cup, the population turned against the government, and the government was quickly forced to backtrack on its decision and allow FIFA's rule that football must be run by football people to prevail. So that you know, it is on, FIFA's strength is on the back of its extraordinary marketing plan that has given birth to the World Cup that we are all looking forward to over the next month.
Wow, Fred. I mean, well, you are in there. Is it the passion and our love for it that basically controls everything?
Oh yeah, football is a game of passion. It's not so much a game of logic, because at whatever level you are, if you subject your your decisions and your actions to any street logic. I always tell people that the kind of things I would do in football, as a professional, I'll never advise my client to do it. It's simply a matter of passion. At the end of the day, it's close to people's hearts, and it cuts across. You see, during World Cup, when teams lose, you see the grandma crying, you see the grandchild also crying. It cuts across. It's a deadly game of passion.
Wow.
And if I may add very quickly, I think what we are seeing in Ghana right now is actually the opposite of what FIFA intended this rule. The effect, it's actually having the opposite effect of what FIFA intended this rule to have. Because what you see now is that although we are a football-loving country and the population, was very disappointed when we didn't qualify for the World Cup. But you see the population on the basis of what the depictions in the documentary. The population is willing, and which is what is willing
damn
the consequences, and which is what I believe has given the Attorney General enough capital, and based on whatever the warrant and the investigation is unveiling, to be able to walk into court and to argue its case.
I think you're right there. So, Fred, I mean, should the AG capitalize on our emotions and something, shut it down, start afresh? Because obviously that's what's giving her.
I think should she? I'll say no, but the actions that have been taken are understandable. If you look at the public outcry, mind you, we are also part of the public. We are equally outraged by what we saw and the kind of things that have been going on, But definitely, I think at our level, we would want to urge some caution and some calmness, because the public is rightly outraged. That is clearly understandable, and it's not just today. I would say it reached a crescendo with the video, but then obviously nobody is happy about what has been going on in our game. Definitely, there's a need for some kind of cleanup. There's a need for some kind of reforms, but the modalities for those reforms, I believe, should be in such a way that we will not end up creating much more cracks or having to come back to do more patch-ups. But that if we're a bit relaxed, we can find a way of arriving at the mutual desires of both government and then the FA at the least cost.
Fred, let me ask this pedestrian question. I mean, can there ever be clean football? The players just get on the pitch, train hard, and play. Is it possible?
And so far as we are human, I doubt if it's possible. But it's an ideal point to aspire to. We could all aspire to get there. You might have situations where referees might play tricks, players might play tricks, club officials might play tricks and things like that. But we can try as much as possible to put in place certain very clear measures to address these issues when they come up. So that at least once you do that, I always say it's not every robber who is daring. But if you put quite a lot of risk to the trade for the person, maybe some 50 or 60% of them will not come in. They will not attempt it. So we can do or put in place a lot of things that can minimize it and then actually enhance our opportunities and then possibilities of getting to the most desirable, ideal situation. But as to 100% clean game, it's just ideal.
What have the West done to their Premiership League that we are not doing? I mean, they play ball on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, full house. Here, even if it's free, nobody turns up. What are they doing that we're not doing? You are in there.
Marketing 1, branding 2, finance 3, governance 4. And governance, I think, is the most important. It's because of bad governance that we are sitting here this evening. It's because of bad governance that Attorney General has had to go there. Because no serious sponsor would like to put his or her head in a game which is riddled with scandals and the rest. You saw the description the Attorney General gave, which was it was a very heavy one, very difficult to swallow, but unfortunately you cannot be grateful. So governance, finance, marketing, branding, very huge parameters that needs to be considered.
Tell us your
I think Fred has just listed factors that I believe are all codified in one of the FA's rules, which I think is one of the biggest contributors to the situation we find ourselves in. FIFA has encouraged all associations to implement what is known as a club licensing regulations, which address all the various aspects that Fred just pointed out. And one thing to note is that these regulations from FIFA are for aspirational purposes. They are risk management regulations, in which is why it is, you know, I think most people are glossing over and missing the point that what has gotten our FA president into trouble is not a criminal law. It is an ethical code which attempts to preempt criminal activity. So if you have these risk management tools and you're not implementing them, then perhaps there's an argument that your organization is not following the rules, and perhaps could be a basis for the Attorney General's argument in court. Because if there are rules that are supposed to curb or to reduce the risk of certain occurrences that might actually now render your whole association an ongoing criminal enterprise, and you are not following those rules, then I'm sorry. And the other issue that brings about is perhaps the GFA's trademark has been watered down because the clubs are not complying with it, and you're allowing them to use your trademark. So I think, you know, and on the issue of match fixing, I believe in 2014, FIFA actually sent out a circular to all member associations outlining and detailing a roadmap as a risk management safeguard for match fixing. Whether or not our association did that,
we'll live to see. It's been a very interesting discussion. I had with me in studio Mr. Fred Papo, Director, Accra Great Olympics, and former GFA Vice President, and also lawyer Selassie Adeka, international business and sports lawyer. Thank you very much for watching. We'll always be back to do this all over again. Have a good evening. Gentlemen, thank you so much.